Hey everybody, my name is Deja and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be giving you some book recommendations for one of my favorite tropes, and that is unhinged women. And by this, I don't just mean like books where it's like, oh my god, she's so quirky and she cries a lot. I mean these books are truly about women unraveling, whether it's grief-driven, obsession, rage, repression. It's about these women just cracking open, and they center women that are falling apart in some way. And the real interesting part of these stories is why. A lot of these books are slower paced, very character driven, but the real interesting part of it is that we are just following these women, seeing them not be able to hold it together, and seeing what they do because of that. These women aren't just losing it for shock value. It's truly about what happens when a woman's inner world, her desires, her anger, her trauma get too loud to contain. And it's rarely pretty. Sometimes it's violent, sometimes it's delusional, and sometimes it's just deeply uncomfortable. But what I love about these books is that they let the experience be messy and real and raw and vulnerable. They aren't trying to sanitize anything or make these characters likable, because the majority of these characters are honestly deeply unlikable, but they're just offering them up on a platter and being like, oh my god, here she is, a woman who stopped trying to hold it all together, and now you have to look at her and see what she's experiencing, think her thoughts, and see what she's gonna do next because of her unraveling. And while I do love all these books, there is one thing I want to mention, and that is when I put together this list, I noticed that almost all of these books are about white women or Asian women. I think that has a lot to say about where our society is, because even when I think about the Asian authors who wrote these books, the majority of the characters and the authors are all lighter skinned, except two books I do have by a black author, but it's one black author who is on this entire list. And while I love these stories, I love the messiness, I love the breakdowns, the intensity of it all, I couldn't help but think about how rare it is to see black women or other women with darker complexions get to be unhinged like this on page. And I don't just mean in like a stereotypical way, not in a way that's like flattened or angry or crazy or just there for trauma, because I've definitely read some books that have angry women in it, and I've definitely read a lot of horror books that feature a lot of black women, but for some reason we just don't get to see black women be unhinged like this in books. I want to see black women get to be the same as these other characters, where they can be fully human, deeply flawed, and coming undone for just very complex reasons. As I said, I do have two books on this list by one black author that feature black women, and they do get to unravel and fit into this trope, but it's definitely not the norm for that to happen. And again, I think that says something about how we are as a culture and who we decide gets to fall apart and still be seen as interesting and worthy of empathy. So while I love these stories and I'm excited to recommend them, I also want to name that gap and say I hope we do get more stories where black women and other women with darker complexions get to be allowed to be this complex, this messy, and this unhinged. Now, with all that out the way, these are some of my favorite unhinged women books, and let's just get into it. Most of the time, the unhinged woman trope appears in horror books, but I do also have a couple thriller books and some books that I would classify more as literary fiction, but you could argue that they could be in other genres too. I'm going to start off with horror because I feel like that is where this trope really is the most prolific and also just is able to flourish the most. I have a classic, one of the first unhinged woman books, I think, in my opinion, and that is Bunny by Mona Awad. This one follows Samantha. She is a scholarship student at an elite MFA writing program, and she becomes entangled in a clique of eerie, pastel-dressed girls who all call each other Bunny. And as her involvement deepens with this group of girls, there are strange rituals and violent surrealism that begins to overtake their campus life, and the boundary between art, hallucination, and actual danger kind of collapses in a very disorienting fashion. In this, Samantha's psyche splinters as she's truly manipulated by a group that's both enchantingly fun and also horrifyingly cultish. And really, in this book, the psychological horror of her unraveling identity makes female, unhinged, visceral, consuming, and utterly creepy. It is so good. I highly recommend it. This book is truly like a fever dream once you get into it. If you are looking for a book that's going to truly place you in the head of the main character and make you feel just as unhinged as her, this is really the one to pick up. Next up, I have A Certain Hunger by Chelsea G. Summers. This one is one that I truly do love so much. This one follows Dorothy Daniels, and she is a once respected food critic who also happens to be a cannibal. And in this book, she's recounting her erotic, kind of blood-soaked journey from the elite culinary circles to murder. When we're getting her narration, she's actually in prison, and she is very witty. She has such sharp wit, and she weaves in kind of appetite, desire, and flesh into a single disturbing narrative. The prose in this book is so polished The main character's crimes are so indulgent in a way. Out of all these characters, what I love about Dorothy is that she rationalizes her violence as art and pleasure, and her obsession with taste, both culinary and sexual. This book is very interesting because she is approaching it from such an intellectual lens when a lot of the other characters aren't necessarily doing that in these books. So I thought that was very interesting that she approached it from that angle, and she's so kind of cold about it all. And Dorothy is not a likable character at all, but she is a fascinating one for sure. Of course, I have to mention Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke by Eric LaRocca. This is a novella that unfolds entirely through messages between two women who connect online in the early 2000s, only to spiral into kind of a sadomasochistic, psychologically abusive web that descends into a super grotesque violence. The end of this book was one of the first endings where I was like, I am so disgusted. I'm so grossed out by a horror book. It takes a lot for horror to faze me, and this is one of the first books that actually did that for me. As the book develops, there's a lot of dark desires that come out, and mutual manipulation, and boundaries blur into disfigurement and horror. The narrative reveals obsession to be both addictive and destructive at the same time, and the women feed off each other's instability, pushing the boundaries into horror. The unhinged kind of dynamic is explicit, it's sexual, it's unrelenting in its horror, and we see them literally collapse in real time. This one was so interesting because it does have two women that are feeding off each other's energy, and it just is insane to see how they push each other into being unhinged. We have to talk about one of my new favorite authors. I've read almost all of her work by the time I'm filming this. I'm about 70% of the way done with her last book that I have to read, so I put her other two books on here. The first one is Sugar by Mia Ballard, and this is the only author on here who is Black. She's actually Black Indigenous, so I would really recommend her books because we need to support authors who are writing these type of books. Like, if you like unhinged books, you need to be supporting authors of color, especially, again, Black women or women who are darker skinned, because it is so important to be able to have these stories. When 35-year-old Satara discovers her husband's affair with her best friend, she plunges into familiar deceit and death. She has much experience of disposing of men discreetly, so she revels in the chaos, but she soon must outpace her best friend's crusade to expose her, and a love witch offers Satara tempting spells that blurs emotional manipulation and raw power, all while her own hearts become her greatest vulnerability. Satara is truly a femme fatale. We get so much of her story in this book. Not only do we get her present day when she's dealing with this affair, but we also get her in the past as we are seeing her when she first starts disposing of men. She manipulates emotion, lust, and violence with gleeful indulgence. Her unhingedness is truly deliberate, and it is electrifying because it's a collision of like betrayal, vengeance, and erotic control. It is so good. I feel like all of these books have a unique element to them that makes them stand out and makes me love them. And in this one, that is truly like Satara lives a very perfect, idealistic life, and she is still trying to maintain that while also being this unhinged woman. Mia Ballard has also written We All Raw Eventually, which takes place in 2005, and we are following Alexa Valentine, who moves to LA to chase fame. But the deeper that she sinks into Hollywood's promise, the darker the shadows become. Her ambition kind of morphs into an insatiable hunger, with a growing internal darkness demanding more than just spotlight. It demands blood. Until Alexa learns that for some dreams, death is the currency. Alexa's ambition spirals into murderous obsession, and her collapse is public. It's sensational. It's a portrait of unhinged fame where the dream and the raw are indistinguishable. And this one is so short. I feel like it captures the 2000s vibes perfectly, and it's just so phenomenal, and I truly do love this one, and I recommend picking it up. Another booktube classic in this trope, I would say, is Mayfly by CJ Lead. This one is a more recent release, but this one has kind of flown up the charts and become a face of unhinged women books. This one follows Maeve, who is a Disney princess impersonator obsessed with horror and decay. She descends into graphic violence when her inner kind of landscape begins to leak into reality. She moves between these kind of pastel facades that she puts on at her job and these brutal acts that she does outside of work. Her narration is also very sharply poetic, which I loved, and her kind of aestheticized gore and fragmented perspective makes for a disturbingly seductive ride. Maeve kind of splits the surface between sweetness and this feral violence that is textbook unhinged. She embodies emotional alienation, rage, and beauty in a single psychotic aesthetic rupture. And what I really loved about this one is the end, because it goes off the rails and is truly a massacre. This one is a little bit more of like a coming of age story if that's what you're looking for, but that is Chlorine by Jade Song. This one follows Ren Yu, who is a driven competitive swimmer who gradually becomes fixated with the idea of becoming a mermaid, and she's spurred by isolation and kind of performance pressure. Her body and mind begin to betray her in disturbing ways with hallucinations, physical changes, and an unsettling detachment. This one truly is a psychologically drenched coming of age story that leans into horror. Ren's obsession truly does become bodily, and she has this aquatic kind of metamorphosis, and that is her self-destruction. It's an unhinged transformation rooted in identity crisis and perfection run amok. It is absolutely insane what happens in this story, and I love mermaids, so I love this one. Another one that's kind of become the face of unhinged women books is The Eyes of the Best Part by Monica Kim. Came out last year, and this is a deeply unsettling work, and this one does have to do with a kind of coming of age as well, because our main character is in college and she is struggling with her father leaving her family, and she begins to become obsessed with eyes and their power, their beauty, and fragility as her obsession kind of grows into a claustrophobic, violent mania. The story kind of focuses on small, escalating actions that reveal a deeply cracked psyche. I think this book has so much commentary, and I really enjoyed how the author wove in these cultural symbols into the story and how they were represented in this book. One of my favorites is Bloom by Delilah S. Dawson. This one is about Rosemary, and she meets this woman Ash at a farmer's market, and she's instantly enchanted. Ash has everything she admires and desires. She's beautiful, composed, and seemingly perfect, and as their connection deepens, Rose's obsession grows sharp and consuming, and it's teetering between wanting to become Ash and wanting to possess her entirely, but something in their blooming relationship is just not right, and as Rose falls deeper, the more dangerous and surreal things become. This one is about obsession, but what happens when the other person is more obsessed than you? That is really what this book is. It is deeply disturbing and unhinged, and I think we've all kind of related, if you're bisexual at least. I feel like most bisexual women or queer women who are attracted to other women, I feel like there's always that woman that you're like, do I want to be her or do I want to be with her? And that is kind of what this book talks about a little bit too. I don't really see this one recommended often for unhinged women books, but I think that it is a perfect example, and that is Slewfoot by Brom. I love this book so much. This is about Abatha, a Puritan widow who is accused of witchcraft, who kind of forms a pact / friendship with this mysterious creature, and she gets bloody vengeance on her oppressors. This one truly is a transformation story that redefines Abatha's entire identity and unleashes power. I think what I really love about this one is that Abatha's break is so radical from societal norms of this time, and it kind of fuels her even more. It honestly is a feminist rebellion. Of course, I think if any of these women did what they did today, it would be absolutely insane and people would be like, what the fuck? But for it being a historical time period, I think it actually takes place in 1666. For her to do this was absolutely insane. One that I recently read was Night Bitch by Rachel Yoder. This is about a stay-at-home mom who gradually starts to believe that she is changing form into a dog. She begins growling, biting, and enduring kind of sensory hallucinations and losing her human anchor. Her belief grows so intense that fantasies and reality begin to kind of overlap in this uncanny, visceral way. And the novel portrays her mental collapse with equal parts horror and dark comedy. This transformation is a metaphor of maternal rage and identity loss, and it is made literal and animalistic. Her unhinged state is both grotesque and liberating. This one is an embodiment of primal fury erupting from suppressed domesticity. I think that this one is very unique because it talks about mothers. I think the end is a little bit anticlimactic, very anticlimactic in comparison to these books, but I think the commentary still holds up and makes it a phenomenal read. Lastly, for horror, I have To Be Devoured by Sarah Tantlinger. In this book, Andy becomes obsessed with vultures and the idea of consuming raw flesh after grief kind of pushes her towards morbidity. Her journey from fascination to violent urges is both symbolic and literal. This book depicts her seep into despair and desire. The book crosses into the kind of body horror territory. This is unhinged, it's visceral, it's grief-filled, it's driven by obsession with death and consumption. Her inner collapse is grotesque, primal, and utterly uncontainable. And this one is really gross and disgusting for me, honestly, and that's why I love it so much. But I think this one is kind of unique with the more grief elements, and it is also about consumption, which some of these are about consumption, but in a very different way than the other ones. Now moving on to the couple thriller books that I have. First up, I have They Never Learned by Lane Fargo, another classic. This one follows Dr. Scarlett Clark, who is a respected English professor by day, but a precise murderer by night, and she is targeting abusive men at this college campus in the name of female vengeance. We're also following a freshman on this college campus who is kind of experiencing some life changes, and this novel weaves revenge, manipulation, and academic politics into a very tense thriller, in my opinion. Scarlett's unhinged nature emerges as righteous bloodlust and strategic brutality. She is kind of controlled chaos and intellectual and dangerous, feminine and psychotic. I think that I would compare her most to Dorothy. I think that they are very similar characters, but the motivations for why they are unhinged and killing men is definitely very different. And I really liked the academic setting in this one. I think it added a unique element, kind of like Bunny as well. One of my favorite thrillers is Confessions by Kanae Minato. After her young daughter's death, a teacher confesses an unusual, calm, and kind of strategic vendetta to her students and sets a meticulous, cruel revenge in motion. Each layer of her plan kind of reveals greater psychological manipulation and moral breakdown. The twists in this book compound into a haunting study of grief and control. The revenge in this book is truly like engineered, surgical, and emotionally devastating, and it happens over the course of years to multiple people, and you just really see how this woman planned and plotted to get her revenge, and it's absolutely crazy. Because if I was to commit revenge, it would definitely be like this, because I'm the type of person where I know that if anything goes wrong, I'm a freak out, so I need to plan everything very meticulously, and that's what she does in this book. I also enjoyed Blood Sugar by Sasha Rothschild. This one follows Ruby, who is actually a psychotherapist. Why did I just do that? And she has a successful life, but a secret past of justified killings until her husband dies under suspicious circumstances, and she becomes the prime suspect. But she's like, I know that I did not kill this man. I may have killed people in the past, but I did not kill this man. And as the investigation unfolds, her internal rationalizations for her entire life and kind of emotional detachment from the entire situation becomes terrifyingly clear. In this book, she kind of rationalizes her unhinged acts like therapy notes. She's a charming sociopath with justified violence and grace, but she's unhinged nonetheless. And the end of this book really popped off for me. And lastly, I have the literary category, which again, some of these I feel like could be classified in other categories. The first one is My Husband by Maud Ventura, which is another one I recently read. And this one technically is classified as like a French thriller, but I think it's more literary fiction. It's about a woman who is obsessively devoted to her husband, so much so that she meticulously controls her image and behavior to keep him from straying away from her and keep him satisfied. And beneath the surface of kind of marital paradise lies escalating jealousy and manipulation that threatens to shatter everything. Her internal monologue reveals a psyche rigid with paranoia and a need for perfection. Her love becomes a weaponized obsession, unhinging her from self-worth and emotional stability. I think all of us have had a situation where we've had a man or a partner or somebody in our lives that we kind of were on eggshells around, and that we felt like we had to perfect ourselves to fit the mold of what they wanted. And this book takes that to the extreme. It is absolutely unhinged. It is crazy, especially the ending. This next one I actually plan on rereading this month because my in-person book club chose it for our August book, and that is Woman Eating by Claire Coda. This one follows Lydia, who is a mixed-race vampire who struggles to balance her art internship, her fractured family ties, and the need to feed on blood to survive. Her suppressed hunger and kind of like her distance from her culture tear at her sense of self as she tries to kind of maintain a normal life, but the tension builds very quietly in this book, and she teeters on the edge of just kind of giving in and fracturing. In this book, Lydia's unhinged nature is very internal and subtle. It's rooted in identity and repression and hunger. And Lydia's kind of slow emotional fracturing frames female unhingedness as soft and isolated and kind of quietly monstrous, which I really liked about this one. I think it's very quiet in its unhinged nature, but it is unhinged nonetheless. And the last book that I want to mention for this video is Milk Fed by Melissa Broder. This one follows Rachel, who is raised with strict dietary and religious boundaries, and she meets Miriam, an Orthodox Jewish woman who delights in nourishing herself, and also our main character, Rachel. And it changes her relationship with food and lust and guilt, and their kind of growing entanglement becomes a tumultuous dance of hunger and desire and emotional unraveling. Rachel's obsession with food kind of becomes psychological torture as her self self-control kind of slowly erodes. And this book is a slow burn of internal collapse, in my opinion. Rachel's kind of constraining mind dissolves through this kind of paradoxical intimacy of eating and being eaten. If you know, you know. This is unhinged, shrouded in body image trauma and sexual compulsion, which this one I would say is definitely the most like lighthearted of them all, but the way that Rachel is very unhinged, and I think she's a very relatable unhinged woman. I think most of these women are relatable in one way, shape, or form, but a lot of women face what she does, and I think that it is very, very interesting the way that she kind of psychologically unravels in multiple ways in this book. Here are the majority of the recommendations. There's a lot of them. I don't own all of them, as you guys probably saw because I popped in the images, but I truly do love all these books, and I think that they all have something that makes them unique in the unhinged woman kind of subgenre slash trope. I think that they all bring something to the table that the other ones don't. I truly do recommend all these. Some of them are definitely more extreme than others. Some of them have more body horror and gore than others. Some of them are a little bit slower than others and more character driven, but they all are truly based off unhinged women, and I think all these women are relatable, unlikable, but relatable, and I just love them, okay? I really, really do. Guys, there's literally a man whistling outside my apartment, and it's freaking my dog out, and it's also freaking me out because why are you being creepy? He's literally about to make me be unhinged and go on a rampage, honestly, because why are you whistling when I'm filming and being creepy? Anyways, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if you guys have any other unhinged woman book recommendations down below because I would love to read them. I do truly love this trope, and if you made it to the end, you can also leave me the little dynamite emoji because a lot of these women do explode to let me know that you made it to the end, and I will see y'all in the next one. Bye, everybody.
I'm writing rhymes in the kitchen, soaking in moments we live in. Yeah, you got the nerve to be on me, taking your life